Hello and welcome back to part 3. So this is part 3 of the Bram Stoker's Dracula cabinet restore, and basically where we left off previously I was just removing circuit boards from the back box, and here it's a little bit much of the same. I'm still basically running through the process of removing each circuit board and then basically slowly but surely getting to the lower end guts of the back box so I can then begin the arduous task of removing the wiring loom out of the back box into the playfield cabinet. And this process took I think about 4 hours in total. I was speaking to other friends in the community about their experiences with doing cabinet restores and playfield restores and so forth, and got pretty much a consensus that it can take anywhere between 1 and 4 hours depending on your prior experience. So apparently, once you've got used to doing this, you can whip this all out in about an hour flat. Probably could. Whether I'd want to or not, I don't know. Mainly just because I'm still paranoid that I'll not document a wire, or I'll end up snagging something and then having to recrimp it back onto the connector, which, yeah, I was trying to avoid doing that wherever I could, being quite delicate with the wiring and trying to unhook it all. It's really tethered in back there. I must admit, like the modern sterns you get, and even like the Pinball Brothers Alien I've had, it obviously is nothing like this. The wiring loom is just practically non-existent. There's barely a couple of wires going back to the back box these days. It's quite funny actually when you think about it. Like, the size of the back box really was needed to house all that circuitry and all that wiring, and nowadays you open back a stern and there's a small motherboard with what I think is an ARM processor in it, and it's doing all the work of those boards, and probably like at a fraction of the cost as well, ironically. And it's just, yeah, it's just so much easier. There's just such a lack of wiring in the back of those things. I think I'd be way more confident doing a cabinet restore for a modern stern. Hopefully you never have to, but who knows, in 20, 30 years time, when you're still finding machines that have been on location and they've been beaten to hell by the patrons and stuff like that. So here I was just showing the camera the rust that was on the back of this machine. I think it explains a lot why this back box was using what they call aftermarket parts. So a lot of the boards within this machine, so the MPU, or what I'll call the CPU board, that's a Rotten Dog board, as is the DMD driver board. That was also Rotten Dog. And I noticed there was a lot of rust buildup, which we'll see later on in the video that I bring the camera in on, so you can actually see, here we go, the damage that was done. So you can see that mounting point is pretty much just rusted to high heaven. It's like I could probably need a tetanus shot if I cut myself on it. It was pretty bad shape, and that was literally mounting the CPU board. So it's really strange actually when I think about it. It's like someone went through the effort of replacing the boards but didn't go through the effort of replacing the mounting point, which, it's such a tiny part. It's like £1 to replace it, or the equivalent maybe of $1 in the American markets. It's something you should do. I think if you find any corroded parts in your machines, you shouldn't leave them there, or you should at least try and treat them and then put them back in, not just leave them there to rot and potentially corrode other parts around it. Anyway, so yeah, that's basically what I've been doing in this part of this video, is just, again, removal of the DMD driver board here. And I found, again, behind that board, more corrosion. There was basically more corroded mounting points. So I think whatever happened to this machine, it was probably tombstoned at one point in its life, left with the back box probably on the floor somewhere, and probably left in a really damp area, and then that had wrecked it. I don't think it was any battery damage, just because of the way the mounts, you can see that one there. That one was barely hanging on by a thread. That one was green, so it could have been battery damage, in all fairness. Unlike the one on the left, which was just fully rusted red, which looked more like water damage to me. So at this point, I'm just using the soldering iron. I bought like a cheap one from, I think it was from Lidl. It's just a battery-powered soldering iron. I've got a fairly decent one that's like mains adapter, but it's hassle to have it on top of the playfield like that. I don't really want the wire, and it's really short wire. It's annoying, one of those ones that's designed to be next to a kind of a workstation, and it's not meant to be traveling across like a floor. Um, so this battery powered one's been quite good actually. The only bad thing about it, I find at least, is that it has no way of controlling the temperature. It's just basically hits like 400 C within whatever threshold it set itself. There's no way of adjusting that, which is it's kind of like an all or nothing thing, which is fine if you're just doing some basic soldering like that. Like I was just removing the audio wires, so speaker wires from the speakers. So at this point, I'm just removing all the wires basically out of the clips and trying to feed the wires back into the cabinet. It's a lot of hassle. As I said before, it's funny how machines these days, you just don't get that kind of complexity anymore. Everything's using, like in the Pinball Brothers one, you've got effectively ribbon cables between each, what we'll call node boards, but basically in between each circuit. And then on top of that, they're using Ethernet to transmit power and data, which is a much smarter way of doing things. So yeah, basically that's what I'm doing at the moment. I'm just going through the process of taking all the wiring out, fishing it through. It was a lot of hassle getting all this bit done. So yeah, basically from this point, after I get the all the looming inside the cabinet, that's the back box complete. It's definitely time consuming and a little bit daunting at first, but I'd say for anybody like planning to do it, just make sure you document all the connectors. Take time to record down even the wiring, because it does come in handy. I did run into an issue where some of our writing had smudged, so bear that in mind.